Hey everyone, thanks very much for coming out to see some Thrustmaster action. I'm Tim from the Thrustmaster team. I flew in from Montreal to support the flight sim community, to share with you guys a little bit about us, of course, and a little bit about our future, what we're going to be doing in the very near future. Huge thanks to Evan, to Phil, to everybody who's organized the FlightSimExpo. We have been very lucky to play a role in the FlightSimExpo the last few years. We used FlightSimExpo 2018, the inaugural event, to launch our TPR rudder pedals, for those of you who knew that. 2019 in Orlando, we were there in person. We showed off our FA-18 Hornet Stick add-on for the very first time. 2020, of course, the event was canceled, but we were actually planning on using it to launch our very first foray into the civil aviation space with the Airbus line. And here in 2021, you're going to find out today. I'm going to give a quick overview of sort of where we've been, who we are, all of that kind of stuff for those who don't know a whole lot about Thrustmaster, or at least want to hear from us who we are. We always start presentations like this. It's a quick overview of who we are, what we do as a company, what we focus on as a company. Our three core values: passion, quality, and innovation. These are the values that we infuse into everything that we do, at every product that we make, every foray that we make into serving the flight sim and the racing sim communities. We have 30 years experience, as many of you know, that industry authority. Since 1990, we've been in flight sim. We actually started here on the west coast of the US initially in 1990, making flight sim hardware, making joysticks. It was the first products that we made under the brand Thrustmaster. And since then, we've grown into a worldwide leader of flight sim hardware. We, of course, have multiple licenses. We make official hardware. We are licensed with the US Air Force for our combat line. As I mentioned recently, we've been licensed with the Airbus to make authentic, to work hand in hand with these licensors to make products that are as authentic and as replica grade as we possibly can. It's awesome to have their trust. I think that 30 years experience really helps us gain that trust from those groups. Game partnerships, of course, we partner up with game developers. We work hand in hand with these game developers to make sure that as many as possible of them are plug and play compatible with our sticks from the very first day. And being the industry leader that we are always very fortunate to be plug and play compatible from day one of game launches or from day one of our own hardware launches. And of course, over 30 years, we've been able to build up a huge ecosystem, a couple of huge ecosystems, actually. Not only do we make sticks, but we make, of course, rudder pedals, we make throttle quadrants, and over time, the ecosystems in each different space have added on to each other. We have add-ons. We're able to take our core products and swap out parts, expand them, and really be able to allow the flight sim community, the flight simmer, to customize a setup that is perfect for them. Different price points and different consoles and different specialties of all sorts. Over 30 years, we've been, our development team have been extremely successful at developing our very own owned innovations and technologies that we fuse into all of the products that we make. We've come up with the Heart sensor, a Hall effect sensor, magnetic connections between where the stick meets the sensors for extreme precision, and because it's magnetic based, it doesn't wear down over time. We have our smart, anything that rides along a rail, rides along a very smooth and precise rail, more points of precision than any other product that we make. Our target software system to be able to customize all of the hardware that you have to your own personal preferences, different sensitivities and remapping and make it your own, essentially. And of course, one that's going to come up a little bit later in the presentation, the pendular technology. So being able to really replicate that pendular feeling that you'll get inside a real plane, specifically in rudders, and soon enough we'll see if we've integrated into anything else. So let's have a look at some of the stuff that we've made. I know you guys, for those of you who are the hardest core members of the flight sim community, which is everybody in this room, I imagine, everybody who's watching online, we've got a lot of history, and I imagine that essentially everybody in this room has touched or used or owned a Thrustmaster at one point in their life over the 30 years that we've been in business. We'll have a look at a couple of the older ones. We actually took this picture at FlightSimExpo 2019. That's our HOTUS Warthog, replica grade, 100% metal, combat stick, combat throttle. But even further back than that, the HOTAS Cougar, our very first US Air Force licensed stick and throttle system, 100% metal, replica grade. Further back than that, the Top Gun stick. Anybody remember this? Getting the Top Gun license? This stick rocks, according to the simulations editor at Computer Gaming World way back in the day. And then even further back than that, this is 30 years worth of experience that we have. The Mark I flight control system, back when Mac gaming was the way to go. And on the right side there, the original Thrustmaster, back when we capitalized the M and when word art was considered graphic design. And where are we today? Today we've got a breadth of different products. We serve combat, we serve space, we serve PC, we serve PlayStation, we serve Xbox, we serve civil. A whole bunch of different products and a whole bunch of different price points for a whole bunch of different platforms. You guys probably know most of the products that we have here. The TPRs, of course, there in the top left corner are 100% metal pendular rudder system. We're very proud to feel and say that those are the best rudder system on the market, the most authentic rudder system on the market. Many of you guys probably own it or at least have felt it. Starting at the sort of the lower price point, of course, everybody has to get into flight sim for the first time. This community is growing enormously, thanks most in part to Microsoft Flight Simulator in the last 12 months or so. And these entry-level products are the way that we're capturing and helping to grow the flight sim community and get people who have experienced flight sim for the first time via Xbox, via Game Pass. And this is where we all started. We had one of these cheaper joysticks. We started with very basic flight sims, and then we grew, and our passion grew along with us. So we do make, of course, a few very basic console HOTAS systems. In addition to that, of course, the T16000, not 1600, the T16000 line, which is our PC ecosystem, the stick and throttle HOTAS system plus the TFRP rudders. These are perfect for essentially just stick-based gaming. They're not replica grade, they're not metal, they're an excellent price point, excellent sensitivity, excellent precision for essentially any stick-based game that you want to play. And then the Expert Combat System, I've referenced this a couple of times, the 100% metal, licensed US Air Force Warthog, which is our sort of our flagship within that space. And this is essentially how we've sort of really captured that top end of the market. The guys who are super hardcore really love that combat experience, want things as authentic, as precise, and as awesome as it can get. We actually showed this, of course, like I mentioned, we showed off the Hornet add-on stick, which adds on. It can be replaced with from the Warthog stick on the right there. We showed it off. We revealed it here at FlightSimExpo in Orlando in 2019. And we were very combat focused back then. I don't know if anybody in this room was at that show, but we were very combat focused. One thing that we heard over and over and over again, when are you guys getting into civil? When are you getting into civil aviation? When are you going to do what we love, the FlightSimExpo community, and get into civil aviation for the first time? We knew at the time that we were going to be getting into it in 2020. We wish we could have been here last year, or the show existed for us to be here last year to show off the Airbus line. In 2020, we celebrated 30 years, our 30-year anniversary, and launched our first sticks and throttles in the civilian space. Acquiring the Airbus license and jumping into the future, jumping into the space that you guys all like online and in the room here. In 2020, the TCA line, Thrustmaster Civil Aviation, was born. And we'll sort of go through a little bit of that. We missed it in 2020, FlightSimExpo, so we're going to use 2021 to sort of give a quick overview of this. Of course, civil aviators, civil flight simmers are obsessed with the idea of simulating what they can't get. A lot of the flight simmers that we talk to have their own small aircraft licenses. They've been up there in planes. They've flown around in their own Cessnas or their own small aviation planes. So the fantasy remains with many of the flight sim community. the jetliner, the commercial jetliner, and being able to get into a cockpit that's in a simulator that you can't get into in real life. And so that's really where we focused, and that's where we are continuing to focus 2020, 2021, and beyond. In 2019, for the very first time, the A320 family became the most popular aircraft in the world in terms of number of units sold, and we were super fortunate at the time to already be working with them, to already be trying and attempting to replicate what they do inside their cockpit for that flight sim community. We worked extremely closely with them as a partner, as a licensor, and very quickly turned that partnership around into our first family of civil flight sim hardware. But it starts when you look into a real cockpit, and there it is inside an A320. You be able to see how intense a cockpit is, and this is the fantasy. This is what flight simmers want to be able to replicate in a simulation. Most of them are not fortunate enough to be able to fly these commercial jets, so we wanted to be able to take that experience, that amazing, intense experience, those hundreds and hundreds of knobs and switches and levers, and recreate that fantasy in hardware for the simulation community. But how do you replicate an Airbus cockpit that has that much quantity of stuff inside it and take it into the simulation space? Well, we identified some of course, the most important elements within a cockpit, the important colors within a cockpit, those iconic elements, and we needed to highlight them, both for functionality reasons and for design reasons. You can replicate the feeling, replicate the shapes, replicate the colors, replicate the design essence. And Airbus has that distinct, the souffle under the stick there, that distinct blue shape and color. Right and left-handed sticks. A lot of people who are outside of the hardcore flight sim community don't even know that such a huge plane flies off of a stick. But that left-handed stick, but also the co-pilot's right-handed stick. Distinct buttons, distinct switches, key features, red throttle buttons, landing gear switches, flaps, engine switches, very distinct parking brake knob down there in between the two pilots. This is what we were trying to replicate on the left-hand side. These are some of our very first concept art elements of presenting to Airbus what we think we could do and what we want to be able to offer the flight sim community. So we've got a few of our actual development team's concept art there in the middle. We had direct access to the Airbus team, and we were able to work really closely together to make sure that the pieces that we were working on, the concepts that we were working on, what we wanted to make, what we wanted to offer, were as close as possible, while of course keeping a balance between gameplay and authenticity. That's our first prototype there in the bottom right corner there. And then of course the throttle itself, the throttle quadrant is, this is the cool factor. This is where everything that is authentic to an Airbus exists within that space, within that HOTAS space. All of those knobs that you'll see on the left-hand side, which are from the real cockpit or from the real throttle quadrant, we wanted to replicate that and offer those to the flight sim community. So in the middle there, you can see some of the concept art. On the right, some early prototypes or renders. And it's a serious balancing act. You have to consider features, you have to consider game performance, you have to consider immersion, you have to consider price point, something we have to take into account, of course. We want to make sure that as many people as possible can experience this product, but also we want to appeal to you guys, the hardcore flight sim community. So it's a lot of balancing when we come into a design phase of a whole new product line, especially one that's licensed and requires authenticity. So there are literally hundreds of features inside an Airbus cockpit. We wanted to integrate as many of them as possible into the throttle quadrant. We needed to keep an eye on that balance between immersion, between functionality in game, between everything else. And the solution we came up with, of course, is based on one of our core tenets, which is the ecosystem concept. So the ability to offer the basic throttle quadrant and then add on to it. Add a second quadrant for those 4 engines. Add extra features. and expand out from there. So that's where we landed in the end. We landed on a price point that we were super happy with. We launched the side stick 2020 last year. It's got, you could buy 2 of them if you wanted to have a pilot and a co-pilot. Of course, the left-handed being the default inside a real Airbus. So we made it ambidextrous, and we made it as real as possible. Of course, the souffle blue on the left, on the bottom there. And of course, within there is all of the innovative technology that we as Thrustmaster create, the heart technology, and a whole lot more that really gets that precision and that immersion. And then of course the quadrant itself, the quadrant Airbus, we wanted to, like I said, keep the main quadrant as basic as possible and give those flight simmers the ability to customize, the ability to expand, the ability to grow, the ability to make it their own and make it as authentic and as customized as they personally need it to be. So we chose a few of those core Airbus switches and levers, the reverser mechanism, of course, and made it look as close as possible to the real thing, while of course also being functional in games. The officers pack is what we launched with, what we launched this line with. That's of course the sort of what we see as the core SKU, the core base that you need to be able to grow from. Gives you the side stick, gives you the throttle quadrant in one bundle at $189.99. This is the sales part of my pitch. Quadrant add-on Airbus edition. That's where the ecosystem really comes into play. So you've already owned the main throttle quadrant. Now you want more. You want more of those authentic Airbus A320 features. You want that parking brake. You know that's one of the most iconic features inside a real cockpit. But you also want the added functionality, the speed brake lever, the landing gear switches, and everything else. So step 1, get yourself that add-on Airbus edition. And now the Captain Pack gives you everything that we've created within the Airbus line to date in one bundle. It's launching very, very soon. It'll be available at $279.99. And actually some news, I'm not sure if X-Plane has already announced this or not, but the qualifiers of the X-Plane Landing Challenge happening this weekend. I believe the qualifiers are already in place, have already been selected. But the winner of tomorrow's X-Plane Landing Challenge is going to get the world's first Captain Pack before the launch date of October 12th for everybody else. Anybody else who's looking for it should be able to find it globally on October 12th or beyond at $279.99. So that's it. That's up to date. That's basically 2 weeks from now. That takes us to essentially today, essentially this month, essentially 2021, FlightSimExpo 2021. What comes next? Hidden there at the end. Not sure if you guys have been to the booth yet or not. We unveiled it 1 hour ago for people to be able to see, to be able to touch here at FlightSimExpo. We revealed this video last night. That logo is hidden kind of at the end there. But what's coming in 2021? Those of you who know it, it's coming towards us real fast. Boeing. Jetliners, the immensity of these cockpits, these jetliner cockpits, and the fantasy that we want to be able to provide the flight simulators, flight simmers. Thrustmaster now has the 2 biggest airline manufacturers in the world as licensors. We're very proud to announce here at FlightSimExpo 2021 the acquisition of the Boeing license and be able to reveal the first products within that line. At a first glance of inside an actual Boeing cockpit, you'll immediately notice the difference between this one and the Airbus, of course, in the color, the design, the features, and a lot more. And of course, unlike Airbus, Boeing is a yoke-based cockpit, as all of you know, of course. But one of the key elements of a Boeing cockpit, due to its size and of course multiple other features, a Boeing yoke works in a pendular motion. It's connected down at the bottom at the foot between the pilot's feet. And so it has a pendular motion as it rocks. It doesn't work along a pole that goes essentially into the cockpit directly. It's rocking back and forth on a pendular motion. Remember that. We'll come back to that. When Thrustmaster acquired the Boeing license, we were granted access to their team. We worked very closely in part with them. We underwent the very same rigorous process alongside them to recreate their iconic cockpit as closely as possible for the flight sim community. And today, we're super proud to unveil it to the world. Over 105 years of Boeing history, 30 years of Thrustmaster experience. It's resulted in the world's first replica Boeing Yoke and Quadrant for flight simulation. In 2021, right here, right now, this very hour, we are using FlightSimExpo to share the first images of this product with this exclusive segment of the simming community. This is Thrustmaster's first ever yoke. I'm sure you guys have noticed that. That alone is a huge announcement. This is an ergonomic replica of the Dreamliner 787. We've tried to remain as true as possible to Boeing craftsmanship, to Boeing functionality, to the feel of a Boeing yoke as you rock it back and forth. We've replicated that authentic feeling as closely as possible. That same feeling that a commercial pilot gets when they take off or land in a Boeing Dreamliner. And that's a lot easier said than done. You remember from that last slide, we looked inside a cockpit, and with the authentic Boeing yoke being connected at the floor, it's a much longer lever, much longer rocking point, essentially. So we need to be able to replicate that in a desktop feeling, in a desktop environment. And I challenge those of you who have felt a real Boeing yoke to come by our booth here at FlightSimExpo and feel it. See how close we got. We're quite confident, very happy with what we've replicated here. And our team worked very closely with Boeing to make sure that at every step along the way that we replicated the feeling, that we replicated the design, and we replicated the Boeing yoke as closely as possible, especially in that pendular feeling of the yoke rocking back and forth and the snap back to the center as you turn or as you pull back or push forward on the yoke. Boeing was involved in every step of the design process to make sure that our product range fits in with their real-life shape, feel, and of course the throttle quadrant as well. I don't want to forget that. The yoke is of course what we're really excited about today because it's a big announcement for us. But the throttle quadrant, just like the Airbus line, replicates many of those authentic functions that you'll find inside a real Dreamliner cockpit, including the iconic autopilot function. Part of what helped us replicate the feeling and the sturdiness and that bounce back, that snap back feeling within a pendular authentic yoke is the fact that the interior of our product is 100% metal. It's robust, it's precise, it's durable, and we think it's as authentic as it can possibly be within the flight sim space. Feels like a dream. And thanks to Boeing's commitment and their trust of the Thrustmaster team at every step along the way, from material choice, component selection, product testing, validation, and approvals, we've succeeded in developing a completely unique product range. We're convinced that simmers will be able to feel all of the hard work, all of the value, and the passion, quality, innovation, and technology that we have poured into this one-of-a-kind collaboration. Our full reveal of the TCA Boeing Yoke will begin in a little bit over 6 weeks on November 9th. You can watch our social media for a lot more information. Basically, what I've said today is as much as we're going to say until that time. Right now, however, everybody who's here physically at the show can head to our booth 109 at FlightSimExpo, and really get a feel for it. Take your own photos, take your own videos, ask us any questions we like. We'll answer not very many of them, but some of them. And really get a feel for that yoke, for that quadrant, and see what you think. And let us know what you think as well. So, like I said, we're here at FlightSimExpo. We are here to show you guys the very first images and get your hands for the very first time on that yoke. But we are essentially going to open it up to you guys now to be able to ask any questions you like. I know that we have a couple of live streams that are happening right now. We're going to open up some questions to the live stream. Going to try to tackle 2 questions from both of the live streams. That's the official FlightSimExpo live stream and Chewy's cross stream or live stream. Plus I'm going to try to get 2 questions from here on the show floor. While you guys sort of put your questions into the chats, raise your hands if you like. I'm actually going to play a pre-recorded question from Chewy himself, because he got a bit of a head start on this one, as you can see from the hoodie that he chose.
Hello, Thrustmaster and everybody at FlightSimExpo. I'm so sorry I can't be there this year, but I hope you're all having an absolutely amazing event. My question to Thrustmaster is, you guys have always been associated with creating joystick systems. Now that you're venturing into a completely different type of flight control system, how much of a challenge has that been for the team?
It's a good question, and I had a bit of a head start on answering it as well, of course. As mentioned, this is going to be the first yoke we've ever made. We have 30 years experience, but we've never made a yoke, which is a huge hurdle that we had to overcome. We're very lucky that we work so closely with game developers, with licensors, and that our R&D team is so experienced in creating these new technological leaps, these innovative technological leaps. And so we're very confident, very comfortable that we have been able to tackle this yoke in a way that hasn't been done before on the market. That just that pendular rudder motion, or sorry, pendular yoke motion on its own is hopefully going to be enough to show you guys that. We tackled this the same way that we tackle any of our products. We did our absolute best, and we're going in there confident that this is going to be a game changer for us and for the flight sim community as they grow and grow and grow. Do you have a question before?
Yes. I noticed in the concept art there that you had it was different from the throttle quadrant was different from the throttle quadrant you had at the show here.
Mm-hmm.
One you have here has a spoiler knob. I noticed the other one there has a flat knob.
Okay.
So what?
On the Airbus ones, you mean?
No, wasn't that the in your Boeing back up? There. Go right.
Yeah.
There.
Excellent point. So those of you who've been to the booth, been able to touch the product, good question, by the way. I don't know if the live stream heard it or not, but the question was that the image that's on this page here seems to have a flap knob. Is that right? This one's the flap knob, and then this one's the speed brake on the left-hand side. And you can actually see that the throttles are swapped as well. Very observant, by the way. I did not feed you that question. The throttle quadrant, we are very happy to say, this wasn't a feature we were planning on revealing today. We were hoping it was just going to be noticed by those of you who notice these kinds of things, are completely reversible. So they're ambidextrous and completely swappable. There will be, as part of our sort of expanding ecosystem, we'll be able to look at that stuff over time. But for now, the 2 throttles, the speed, flaps and the speed brake are interchangeable, and they all come with the product out of the box. So you'll have 4 different features to be able to connect to 3 different axes. Good question.
Yeah, does management see any possibility of bringing the F-16 throttle quadrant back?
The F-16 throttle quadrant?
The 16 Falcon.
Yeah, the F-16 Falcon one. It's obviously, we're not going to say yes or no right now. It's something that we're very aware of. Sorry, the question is whether or not we're going to bring the F-16 throttle quadrant back and the Falcon throttle quadrant. We are focused right now, as you can probably tell, very closely on civil. But as we are expanding our combat, especially our metal-based combat SKUs, we are listening to the community, and we're doing our best to sort of expand to the planes that are most relevant, especially to the games that are out there right now, but also the planes and the jets that are most in demand. So all I can say right now is we've heard it. We already know, because we have the history with it. It's one that could be likely to be seen even earlier than some of the other ones. Some live stream questions. Dan?
Yeah, Tim. Wow, this is a loud microphone. Okay. Will Snodgrass from the chat wants to know what the two sliders at the base of the Boeing Yoke are used for.
So just like our sticks, for example, the Airbus side stick, some people will choose to just get the stick, not get the throttle quadrant as well. It will be available as a standalone SKU. I think I'm allowed to say that. But those sliding knobs at the bottom will be able to essentially, you can remap any button to anything that you want, but if you don't have the throttle quadrant, those can be used as throttles themselves, or they could be used essentially as anything that you would see relevant. Of course, we always refer to these as replica grade, as replicas of the real thing, but you have to keep in mind that we also need to make them functional in games. So it's all part of that same balancing act, to be able to give people at a price point that makes sense to the community all the functions that make these products work in-game and making them as authentic to their real-life counterparts as possible.
Okay, we got a couple of questions, one from Carlos and one from Chase. Both of them are asking about the price. Do we have an estimated price range?
Good question. We knew that we'd be getting that question. We have no information to share today on price point or on the actual release date, other than November 9th will be the next date that we as a brand talk about this product again. For now, we're happy to sort of answer people's questions, but we're not going to be announcing any new information about this product for another 6 weeks or so until November 9th. Just keep an eye out on November 9th. I imagine that price and the date you can physically get one into your hands will both be the first two things that we say on November 9th. Any other questions from the chat? Another one from the audience? Sure.
Yeah, does Thrustmaster have plans to bring any higher-end products beyond the T-Flight line to the Xbox?
Well, I guess I didn't mention that, but this one here is an Xbox SKU. So it's an Xbox and PC product. So it'll work, should work. Obviously, it's very software developer dependent, but this is going to be functional with Microsoft Flight Simulator on day one, both on Xbox Series X and on PC.
I'm excited for this. I just have a quick question. Can we expect a similar release schedule like the TCA, right? Like it has add-on and then you provide your own costs. Looking to the future, can we expect a similar release schedule with possibly an add-on as a view or something that we thought about?
So we're not announcing anything beyond these two specific SKUs or this bundle right now, but as I mentioned, ecosystem is something that we are very aware that the community needs, community wants, and that makes sense to us as well. People who just want to spend X amount of money and keep it as basic as possible can do that, and those who want to expand that line beyond can do so. So we've done it on Airbus. We're aware that it's something that really resonated well with the community, that made sense to us, both as a business and as a development team. And so you can expect that essentially everything we do from this point forward, we will at least have a focus on ecosystem. But I'm not able to announce in terms of anything about add-ons beyond the products that we're talking about today for the Boeing line. Yeah.
Are you taking pre-orders now?
Pre-orders now? Come talk to me in the booth, cash in hand. We'll see what we can do. Yeah, back here.
So do you expect the same supply chain issues or delivery delays that you saw with the Airbus line?
That's a good question. I'm not going to say yes or no, and I'm not going to give any sort of specific details about our supply chain. We know that, not just us, any hardware maker, of course our competitors, but essentially anybody in gaming or electronics or hardware manufacturing has had a negative effect during COVID on their manufacturing process due to internal parts acquisition. We, of course, as flight sim makers, not only had the negative effect of COVID, of COVID affecting our manufacturing, but the positive effect of COVID of skyrocketing demand because people are investing in their in-home entertainment systems. And of course, add on to that, Microsoft Flight Simulator launching at the same time as COVID, more or less. So it was a tough situation to be in at the same time as it was a good problem to have in terms of very, very high demand and negative effects on our supply. But I guess one way to say it is, internally speaking, we can see the light at the end of the tunnel in terms of the manufacturing problems that we and most of the other electronics manufacturers have had. And we are optimistic, let's say, or maybe even confident, optimistic verging on confident that, that this is going to be a problem that will be more and more under control. We're very aware, based on the extreme demand that we had on the Airbus line, that there will be the same, if not higher, on the Boeing line. And let me just say that we've had a pretty good head start on trying to preemptively solve that problem. So,
Tim, thank you. That was great.
thank you, Evan.
What did you guys think? It was so good that even Honeycomb is in the back giving a round of applause. So there you go. One of our media partners should go interview Nikki right now. Anyone who wants to do that, I challenge you all. Tim, that was great. You know,
Thanks, Evan.
one of the things that we've always tried to make this show is into something where people can come and bring their announcements, bring their new hardware and show it off to the community. And even despite a global pandemic and having to do a COVID test to get here, you still did that. So thank you guys very much. And of course, Thrustmaster is a huge sponsor this year, diamond sponsor alongside Honeycomb and many others. So again, big thanks to you and the team. This was great.
Thanks, Evan.
Tim, if folks have more questions for you, can they do that outside somewhere?
Absolutely. I mean,
Yeah.
we'll be at booth 109 the rest of this show. You guys have probably seen us there. We're going to be hosting a Captain Canada live stream a little bit later this afternoon. We're hanging out with Jeff Favignano, with Blue Games, a couple of the other influencers who are in attendance. And we're having fun. We're showing off the Yoke. Come get a feel for it. Come get your hands on it. FlightSimExpo 2021. Big hand for Evan, who's put this thing together. He does an incredible job. He's literally the best guy to work with in the industry. Let's party. Thanks, man.